So if you click this video, you're probably tired of being tracked around the internet by creepy companies and having your data collected by companies like Google and Facebook. So Google and Facebook collect a lot of data about you as you use their services and even as you don't use their services, as they have trackers and cookies in all kinds of websites across the internet. So it can almost seem impossible to escape from these companies and avoid having your data tracked. But I'm going to help you improve your online privacy, so basically they get as little of your information as possible. Now, when I first started learning about online privacy, I watched some videos and read some articles that basically assumed that you were Edward Snowden and you needed the absolute utmost protection of your privacy. So it was giving me all these complicated things to do to fix my privacy, and it was just like completely overwhelming to me. And so basically I didn't do anything instead of just taking some small steps that would have helped me a lot more than doing all this advanced technical stuff that you don't really need just as the average user. Even if you only implement one or two of the things that I mentioned on this list, you're already going to be improving your online privacy by a lot. And that's what really counts. Just any little bit that you can do to improve your privacy goes a long way just to helping these companies not know everything there is to know about you. So I'm going to start off with the most obvious, and that is stop using Google. So Google tracks all of your searches and it keeps a record forever with all of them. If you look at your personal data page in Google, Google collects tons of information about you, and one of the easiest things that you can do is just stop using the Google search engine. So I use DuckDuckGo, which is a search engine that does not track you at all, and the search works pretty well actually. Sometimes the results aren't as good as Google's, but for the most part, I almost always find what I'm looking for. If you absolutely need Google, then you can use startpage.com instead. So Startpage is just a proxy for Google, so it gets you all the same results as Google, but you're not using Google and it's not tracking you. So what I actually do is I use multiple search engines. If I can't find something with DuckDuckGo, I'll use a different search engine like Startpage or even Cirx, or sometimes I'll just look on the site itself. If I want to find a post on Reddit, I'll search on Reddit instead of Google. So that's a really important first step, just setting your default search engine to DuckDuckGo or something like that. So you can try each one out to see if you like it, if it works for your needs. There's a lot more, but these are the main ones I use. Now, if you change your search engine from Google, that doesn't really mean anything if you're still using Google Chrome. So Google Chrome is a really nice browser, but the reason they give it out for free is because they're using it to collect a lot of personal data on you. So instead of that, you should use a privacy protecting browser like Brave or Firefox. Now personally, I like Brave because Brave is really nice out of the box. It blocks ads and blocks trackers from a whole bunch of these websites. So it blocks a lot of trackers from Google, Facebook, and those companies. Out of the box, you don't have to configure any settings, which is really nice if you don't want to do any of the setup work yourself. Firefox is also really good, but for Firefox, I would also download uBlock Origin or some other similar ad blocking plugin, but this is basically the best, and that'll help block a lot of other trackers as well as ads. So that's already a really good start, but even if you use one of these browsers, they can still track you with cookies around the internet. So if you want a little bit of extra credit, what you can do in these browsers is go into settings and you can set it to clear cookies whenever you exit the browser. So for me, whenever I exit Brave, it automatically clears all the cookies. So that might seem a little inconvenient to you, like it automatically logs you out of all your sites every time you close your browser. But if you have a password manager, I personally use Bitwarden, then logging back into each website whenever you need it is not a big deal at all. So I would recommend doing that if you want a little bit extra credit. Another really big privacy invasion is your email. So if you're using Gmail, Outlook, or some other similar webmail service from one of these big companies, they basically have access to read all of your mail, and they do. So Google's Gmail is free because they read all of your email and use it for advertising purposes to you. So that's why you see all these scarily accurate advertisements all over the internet. But instead of using Gmail, what I would use is ProtonMail or Tutanota. These are both really good privacy protecting emails. ProtonMail is free and it has an app and it has a webmail. So if you're switching over from Gmail, it's almost no difference. You just go to ProtonMail instead of Gmail. Or you can do what I did, and I don't even have a ProtonMail. I just host my own email server on my own VPS server. Now that might be a little bit advanced for you. It took a little bit of work to set up, but if you just want to get away from Google, then I'd use ProtonMail. That's probably your best bet. Next, you have social media. So if I were you, I would just completely delete all of your social media accounts. You don't really need it. I don't have a Twitter, a Facebook, Instagram, or any of that. Besides spying on you and collecting all kinds of personal information, it's just a huge time sink. It's a waste of time, and it really makes you more antisocial than anything, checking social media all the time. It becomes like an addiction. At least that's how it is for me whenever I used it. So I don't use any kind of social media. That might be too extreme for you, like you absolutely need your Instagram. But basically, the less social media you can use, the better. So maybe you don't need to use all of these different social media sites. Maybe you can just use Twitter if you really like Twitter. And you can also cut down on your usage by deleting all the apps from your phone and only using the websites inside your privacy protecting browser that's clearing the cookies after each exit. Another little note is to not use the sign in with Google or sign in with Facebook buttons that you see all over the internet when you're creating a new account on something. So these track you all around the internet as well, and you're basically telling Google everything that you use if you're using sign in with Google. So maybe it's a little bit more trouble to create an account with your username and password, email and password, but it's going to be a lot better in the long run to prevent them from tracking you. So that's all the easy stuff. If you want to make a bigger change, you can actually change your whole desktop, or you can change your whole operating system. If you're on Windows, to a lesser extent Mac, Windows spies on you with pretty much everything you do. So it's always sending telemetry back to Microsoft. What kind of data is it collecting? Nobody really knows. If you use some sketchy programs, you can disable a lot of telemetry, but you can't really disable it completely. So you don't really know what Microsoft is learning about you through their operating system. That's what happens when you use these closed source operating systems and programs. Basically, all the code is run behind the scenes, so you don't really know what they're doing. With an open source operating system or program, Ubuntu is open source, so basically you can go in there and read all the code, and everybody across the internet, or anybody who uses this, can read the code and audit it and see if there's any problems or issues or privacy disrespecting things about it. So that's why it's a lot better to use than a closed source operating system like Windows or Mac OS. I mean, Mac OS, they pride themselves on being more privacy focused if you look at their advertising, but they're kind of the same thing because you don't really know what they're doing behind the scenes. You just have to take their word for it. And for me, I don't really like to take their word for it. I'd rather just use Linux or something like that, where I know I have control over my operating system and it's not doing anything that I don't want it to. So I only brought up Ubuntu because that's probably what I recommend for newbies to Linux. If you've been interested in Linux, then you can just download Ubuntu, put it on a flash drive, put it into your computer, test it out, see if you like it. So I started using Linux a couple of years ago and I've never looked back. It's just such a better experience than using Mac OS or Windows that I would never ever want to go back. And it's a lot better for your privacy as well. So that's why I'm recommending it. Now you might have noticed I left out one important piece, and that's your phone. So your phone is generally really bad for your privacy because what your phone is basically a surveillance device first and a personal computer second. So you don't have root access over your phone or anything. It's basically controlled by Google or Apple. It sends all the data back home, and you're not really sure what they're sending behind the scenes. So that's why I try to use my phone as little as possible. So what I do to protect my privacy on my phone is just leave my phone at home. 90% of the time I go out, my phone is at home, doing nothing, just sitting there. Because everywhere you go with your phone can be tracked. If you've seen like your Google Maps records and Google knows exactly where you've been throughout the day, it can be really creepy. I don't want Google to know every place that I've been. I just use my phone as a home phone. And then this might sound kind of crazy if you've never tried it before, like, oh my god, how can I live without my phone? I need it in my pocket at all times. But it actually is a nice life hack as well. It makes your life a lot better. Whenever you're hanging out with friends, you're actually talking to them instead of playing on your phone or something like that. And it's a nice little life hack for your relationships and your personal life, besides just being privacy protecting. So if that sounds totally crazy to you, then just try leaving your phone at home maybe one day a week or just a few times. Like whenever you go out to get groceries or go to the gym, you don't really need your phone. So that's what I do. I just started leaving my phone at home more and more until I almost never need to take it out. Now, if I'm going on a long trip or something, I'll still bring my phone so I can find maps, locations, and answer emails if I have to. But most of the time when I'm just heading out, I just leave it at home. You can tell your friends that you don't carry your phone around with you, so you can make plans with them before you actually head out and just leave your phone at home. And then when you actually meet them, you can be phone free. And that's probably the best way to do it because privacy protecting your phone is a lot more difficult than privacy protecting your computer. You can do some obvious things like I would install the DuckDuckGo browser or the Firefox browser instead of using the Google search. And you can try to find more privacy respecting apps like maybe Telegram or Signal instead of WhatsApp. But I'll be honest, I still use a lot of the default apps on my phone like Google Maps, and unfortunately I still use WhatsApp because some of my friends use that. But just like any little bit that you can do with your phone to make it more privacy protecting is going to help you out in the long run. So just do as much as you can, don't worry about the rest, and try to leave it at home as much as possible. So this was by no means a comprehensive tutorial on how to completely protect your online privacy like Edward Snowden, obviously. But if you're just a normal person that wants to not be tracked by internet companies as much, that's a good start. So if you're really interested, you can do more. Try to find some more open source alternatives to popular apps that you use. This video was just kind of to get the ball rolling, to give you some ideas so you can kind of take it from here and continue to improve your online privacy.